Welcome to Pinnacle of Awesome, Buddhism Basics. I'm your host, Pema Shamsetso, and I'm here to help you understand the fundamentals of Buddhism. So whether you're a new Buddhist, a longtime practitioner, or just someone looking to be happier, this podcast is for you. Today I'm going to be talking about the objects of refuge, the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. These terms are in the original Sanskrit because English doesn't have good translations for them, especially not one-word translations. I'll be giving you not only the definitions of these words, but also what it means to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So today we'll be talking about Buddha. Buddha means awakened omniscience, or vast awakening. Buddha is true happiness. Zero negative thinking and zero negative karma is true happiness. Therefore, Buddha is zero negative thinking and zero negative karma. The difference in definition between what Buddha means and what Buddha is an important distinction. Buddha is not just some handsome Indian prince who lived more than 2,000 years ago. Buddha is a state of enlightenment. That's what we mean when we say that Buddha means awakened omniscience. Fully awake, fully aware, knowing each and everything exactly as it is. If you have a Buddha path, you can look on page 32. Here you will find a longer list of what Buddha is. Buddha is vast awakening. Buddha is uncompounded original purity. Buddha is the nature of my mind. Buddha is immeasurable wisdom. Buddha is unconditional love. Buddha is endless power. Buddha is absolute truth. Buddha is infinite peace. Buddha is boundless compassion. Buddha is incalculable luminosity. Buddha is indestructible bliss. Buddha is unchangeable happiness. Buddha is unsurpassable enlightenment. Most of the times when we're talking about Buddha, we're talking about a very specific type of Buddha. We're talking about result Buddha, someone who has attained that state of enlightenment, someone who has attained awakened omniscience. There are three types of Buddha. There is ground Buddha, path Buddha, and result Buddha. Ground Buddha is our Buddha nature. Buddhism asserts that all beings are naturally Buddha, 100% pure. If we go back to page 32 of the Buddha path and look at Buddha is uncompounded original purity, Buddha is the nature of my mind, we're talking about ground Buddha. Think of ground Buddha like the sun. The heat and the brilliance of the sun is not always seen. In fact, from Earth, we see a very small portion of it, especially when it's a cloudy day, or even if it's nighttime. That's what it's like to be a sentient being. We have Buddha nature, but it's obscured. It's covered by clouds. That doesn't mean that somehow the clouds have defiled the sun. It just means that we have a harder time observing the sun. And there are days when there are less clouds and the world seems brighter. And there are some days where there are more clouds and the day seems darker. And there are some times when a ray of sunshine peeks out of the clouds. And we can see that. Just because we can't directly perceive the sun all the time doesn't mean it's not there. When the nighttime hits, it doesn't mean that the sun stops existing. It just means that there's a planet in the way. There's a very large obscuration in the way. That luminous, sun-like radiance of your Buddha nature doesn't go away. Even on your worst day, even when you have a planet-sized obscuration in your path, the sun still shines. Your Buddha nature still shines. Just because we don't see the glowing, round sun in the sky doesn't mean that it's not radiating light in ways that we can perceive. There is still more light on a cloudy day than there is at nighttime. And we can see that. Even though we don't see the sun itself, we still see the light that radiates from it. And while it can seem like the clouds are marring the sun, once you go above those clouds, the sun is as bright and as warm as ever. That's ground Buddha, your Buddha nature. The second Buddha is Path Buddha. Path Buddha is my 5 positive thinkings, my renunciation, compassion, faith, love, and wisdom. I'll be going more in depth on those 5 positive thinkings in the next lesson when we talk about Dharma. Every positive thought we have is like a baby step towards enlightenment, towards Buddha. It's the path we take out of samsara, which is why we call this Path Buddha. Every instance of positive thinking is like taking a step, and starting out is always hardest. But once you find your stride, it becomes easier to follow whatever path you're on. And you can look down the path and see how far you've come. The path of Buddhism is a happy one. It may take a lot of work. It's certainly not a spa day, but it is a joyful path. It is a happy path. And once you start on it, once you take those first faltering steps, it becomes easier to follow the rest of it. It's the habit, the meditation, the repetition of each little baby Buddha that allows your Path Buddha to grow into a result Buddha, allows you to walk this path to your destination. Result Buddha is someone who has achieved Buddha, someone who has perfected this path and realized true happiness, someone who has perfected the cessation of negative thinking and negative karma. When we talk about Buddha, a lot of the times this is what we're usually talking about. Result Buddha is the object of most of the paintings and drawings and statues of Buddhas that we have, who we talk about when we talk about Buddha Shakyamuni. We talk about result Buddhas as someone who has attained that state of Buddha, attained awakened omniscience. One of the ways that you can conceptualize the idea of ground Buddha, path Buddha, and result Buddha is like this. As we walk the path to Buddha, as we cultivate our path Buddha, it becomes more and more like ground Buddha, like our nature. The closer we come to enlightenment, the more we resemble our nature. Once our path Buddha matches our ground Buddha, that is when we become result Buddha. It can be difficult to conceptualize result Buddha, not only because the descriptions of result Buddha seem hyperbolic to us, but also because result Buddha is beyond the 4 extremes. We are beings with inherently dualistic thinking. We like to put things in little boxes and label things. We like to say, this is where you fit, this is where you belong. So when we talk about Buddha, a lot of this language is meant to help us conceptualize something that is beyond our capability to conceptualize right now. It's one of the reasons why we have to use a lot of metaphors. To be beyond the 4 extremes means that you are beyond existing, beyond not existing, beyond both existing and not existing, and beyond neither existing nor not existing. Outside of those 4 extremes, our thinking can't conceptualize anything else. So this is our goal, to get to a state beyond the four extremes, where we are awakened omniscience, zero negative thinking, zero negative karma, true happiness. When you look for a guide, you look for someone who has done what you want to do, who can give you advice, who can teach you. When we look for a guide to get to Buddha, we want someone who has attained Buddha. We have a history of Buddha Shakyamuni attaining Buddha, attaining the goal that we strive to attain. The Buddha taught. Buddha Shakyamuni attained awakened omniscience and then told us how to do it too. So when we take refuge in Buddha as our guide, we are taking refuge in the wisdom of Buddha. We're saying, Buddha, you've done it before. Please guide me on this path. If Buddha Shakyamuni could do it, so can I. I want to have 100% happiness. You take refuge in Buddha as your goal. You take refuge in Buddha as your guide. You take refuge in Buddha as your ultimate destination. And you take refuge in Buddha as the condition of happiness. Because negative thinking conditions negative thinking. My negative thinking conditions all beings' negative thinking. Buddha does not have any negative thinking and has no negative karma. Buddha is true happiness. Zero negative thinking and zero negative karma is true happiness. In order to be true happiness, you cannot have any conditions for suffering. Therefore, Buddha is a perfect condition. Even my positive thinking is still wrapped up in obscurations. Think of it like receiving food from a good cook versus a professional chef. The food from the good cook it's good, but the food from the chef is amazing. When we think of the word refuge, the first sentence that comes to mind is taking refuge from a storm. The storm is suffering. And when we take refuge in Buddha, we're taking refuge in the fact that someday we won't have to deal with storms ever again. That our goal is to be 100% positive thinking. We take refuge in the being that has walked that path before as our guide, as someone who can tell us how to do it. And we take refuge in Buddha as a perfect condition for our happiness. So if you have a Buddha path, if you would like to turn to page 48, you can read along with me. May I realize Buddha is immeasurable happiness. May I realize Buddha is immeasurable wisdom. For the unchangeable happiness of all sentient beings, from now until enlightenment, in any situation, in every situation, I take refuge in the Buddha. The Buddha is my guide. The Buddha is the condition of all happiness. From the bottom of my heart, I trust, I promise, I am certain. We are taking refuge in Buddha as our guide and as a condition of our happiness. Buddha can't cause our happiness. Buddha can't take away our suffering. Buddha can't fly down from the heavens and bop us on the head and change our thinking for us. Buddha can't do all of the work. Buddha can only ever be a condition of our happiness. A perfect condition for our positive thinking, but only a condition. It is entirely dependent on our cause. The Buddha said, I have shown you the methods that lead to liberation, but know that liberation rests with you. We are not taking refuge in Buddha as an external creator. We are not taking refuge in Buddha as a creator God. We are taking refuge in Buddha as someone who can lead us out of samsara, someone who can help us break the cycle of ego clinging, someone who can show us how they did it so that we can do it too. For a lot of people, taking refuge in Buddha can be scary because there's a misunderstanding about what that means. Taking refuge in Buddha doesn't mean that you stop questioning Buddha's teachings. It doesn't mean that now that you've taken refuge in Buddha, you have to trust everything that the Buddha says unfailingly and not test anything else. Refuge is a starting point. Refuge is saying, I've applied some of the teachings of Buddha, and they've worked pretty well. So I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep going back to the teachings of Buddha, and I'm going to test them out. And if they work, I'm going to take refuge in them. We take refuge in stuff all the time. I take refuge in a hot water bottle when it's cold outside. I take refuge in a cool drink when it's hot. I take refuge in chocolate when I'm sad. I take refuge in cat videos when I'm upset. Those objects of refuge have not consistently protected me from suffering. The teachings of Buddha have. So when you take refuge in Buddha, you don't have to have complete, unyielding faith in Buddha. You just have to have enough faith that Buddha's teachings are helpful. Have enough faith that Buddha's teachings benefit. Refuge is meant to meet you where you are at and grow from that. Faith in your guide grows with time. You don't know whether a guide is good or not until they've guided you a little bit. And the more they guide you, the more you either trust them or the more you want to find a new guide. When you take refuge in Buddha, you do so at your capacity. And whatever capacity you are at is okay. You don't need to have unyielding, irreversible faith in Buddha in order to say, this structure looks pretty sturdy. I think I could weather a storm in it. So this is your homework for this course. Ask yourself, do you think that 100% happiness is possible? Do you know people who are happier than you? Do you think they know people who are happier than them? Can you push that out all the way to knowing someone who is true happiness? Think about the people that have led you in your life. Why did you choose these people to guide you? They can be teachers. They can be managers, mentors. Think of the people that guided you through certain aspects of your life. Why did you choose them? Did you trust them immediately? Did you test them? Were they recommended to you by someone that you trust? I also want you to really look at what you already take refuge in right now. Think about where you want to go when you are suffering or when you are sad. When you experience suffering, I want you to really observe what you think will get you out of that suffering. That is what you're taking refuge in. When you find those objects of refuge that you already have, I want you to think about their success rate. Is this something that always works? Does it always work to the same degree? I also want you to write down some instances of positive thinking. At the end of the day, write down 3 positive thoughts you had. 3 instances of renunciation, compassion, faith, love, or wisdom. For today, you could write down that you actively sought out Dharma teachings. You actively looked for a way to decrease your negative thinking. Write that down. That's a baby Buddha right there. That's a path Buddha. And I want you to take some time to rejoice in those moments, to really give yourself the credit that you are due. This concludes the first teaching on this course on the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Thank you for listening to Pinnacle of Awesome, Buddhism Basics. Now that you know what Buddha is, what Buddha means, you can really go and investigate whether or not you think that this is something that is possible. You can look at the things that you take refuge in and decide whether or not they consistently help you weather the storm of suffering. The next teaching is on Dharma. That's the second teaching on our course on the 3 jewels. If you have any questions or just want to share your experiences, you can always email me at pinnacleofawesome@gmail.com. May these teachings benefit you as much as they have benefited me. May we use these teachings to decrease our anger, jealousy, greed, pride, and ignorance. May we use these teachings to increase our renunciation, compassion, faith, love, and wisdom. May we be better people tomorrow than we were today.